Members of the Queen's community will, I hope, remember the conversation, the long discussion about our values and aspirations, which began, I think, in October of 2019 and culminated last October 2020 in the release of my report on the conversation, which pointed to some of the key issues that had come up and spoke about some of the ways in which we might address those issues in the interests of raising the standing and effectiveness of the university in the years to come. I then began the process of refining that report, which was in some senses an analytical essay on the state of the university. I began transposing that into a strategic framework, a framework that will guide us in our planning for the future. Many members of the community I know were party to discussions around that framework, which I discussed at a fairly significant number of open meetings and town halls and meetings with the board in the months between last fall and this spring. The strategic framework was in fact passed at its May board meeting by the trustees. And I'm very pleased to say we can now begin the planning process that it was intended to frame. So I thought I would tell you a little bit about the document and then a little bit about the process that will follow. The document itself is quite succinct. It's a statement of our vision and mission and our values. And those things frame a number of strategic goals, which are in some sense the specific articulation of some of the issues that occurred in the report on the conversation, which I know many of you have read. The vision for the university reflects that hunger for global impact that I heard throughout the conversation. And the mission, of course, talks about how we will go about doing that. And it does make the important point that the university is thinking towards the future. We have had a rich and very significant past as a university, but it is now time to be thinking ahead. The strategic goals, as they're laid out, cover 6 basic topics, and I'll come back to those. What I'd like to just turn my attention to at this point is the values. These are critically important because everyone who's read the report on the conversation will know that a significant portion of that report is taken up with the discussion of climate, the way we do things, the way we treat each other, the values that underpin the work that we do. So the values that are articulated in the strategic framework are in basically 5 catch-all categories: truth, a commitment to truth, to responsibility, to respect, to freedom, and to well-being. And within each of those sets of values, there are some other details. For example, on freedom, there's a dedication to uphold the principles of academic freedom and to defend university autonomy. Under respect, of course, collegiality, civility, generosity, trust, equity, inclusion, and respect for all. And that is where, obviously, our EDII commitments come in. Responsibility is a key one of those values because it, of course, speaks not only to our immediate responsibility to build a diverse, equitable, inclusive, anti-racist community for our people, to indigenize and to decolonize the academy, but on an even greater scale, to observe the interests of the planet and the life it sustains. So then, if one goes to the middle of the document, there is the enumeration of 6 strategic goals. And to anybody who's read the report on the conversation, these will come as no surprise. The first is a commitment to increase the intensity and volume of exemplary, groundbreaking, and interdisciplinary research. The second is a commitment to advancing highly effective pedagogies, leveraging new technologies, and reconceiving educational programs at all levels and types so that we can prepare students better to have impact in the world. The third of the goals is the enhancement of the interdependence of research and teaching. And here it suggests a greater integration of research into the undergraduate experience and an increase in the ratio of graduate to undergraduate students. The fourth of the goals speaks to our international presence, to strengthening Queen's position globally, developing and implementing a comprehensive, equity-focused and integrated program of global engagement that includes active strategic partnerships, enhanced student and faculty mobility, and teaching and learning reform oriented towards a pluralistic and culturally relevant global environment. The fifth of the goals speaks not to our international community responsibilities, but to our immediate local community, building deliberate, strategic, respectful, and mutually beneficial engagement with communities outside the university, including our city, Kingston, the broader region, other organizations and institutions, and national and international networks that share our goals. And finally, the sixth goal is the one that speaks to climate, the kind of workplace this is. And this is a commitment to ensuring that in the workplace, we live our values, that our human resources, our organizational structure, our processes, and our culture are all properly aligned to fulfill our mission. So that is the strategic framework. The next phase, of course, in the process, now that it has been approved by the board, is to move towards the implementation of this document. So beginning in the next week or so, we will be implementing working groups, which are intended to identify a limited and prioritized number of specific initiatives to support each of the goals that I just described to you. Since the overall aim is to maximize the impact of the university in society and in the world at large, the groups are going to be asked to come up with initiatives that in themselves or in coordination with initiatives under the purview of other groups hold the promise of increasing impact. I'm hoping this will be a very exciting phase. We will set up the working groups with a designated chair or a pair of co-chairs and a core membership, but it will be open to the groups themselves to increase their membership with other interested members of the community as they see fit, and to conduct whatever consultations seem appropriate. By the end of the summer, those working groups will report in to a steering committee comprised of the senior leadership team and the deans, and it is that latter group that will begin to put all the initiatives proposed by the working groups into an implementation plan for the coming years. There are two things I should say. I think everyone expects that the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations, on which we fared so well in the recent Times Higher Education rankings, will figure prominently in the work of the groups. After all, if we're thinking about our impact, this is the framework within which it would seem appropriate to do it. Because the SDGs, I think, will be discussed in all the groups, we will have a separate reference table intended to coordinate a discussion of the Sustainable Development Goals across the various working groups. And similarly, because internationalization, I think, will be an important part of initiatives coming from all of the working groups, the fourth of the working groups will be charged with being the coordinating point for the discussion of global engagement. So I've described the strategic framework and the working group process that ensues from it. This is going to be, in one sense, an open-ended process, because the planning and strategic thinking in a university like ours will never really reach an endpoint. But I'm confident that this will set us off on a very positive direction for the future. A key component in that direction is a focus on impact. Back in the days of the conversation, as I said earlier on, the hunger that our community as a whole feels to have and to demonstrate and to see global impact was overwhelming. And I think the strategic framework will help us deliver that. We've lately had a shot in the arm with the results from the Times Higher rankings, which demonstrates that as measured under the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations, we are having an impact. So we do have a good sense of the areas in which we could seek to channel our work to make the maximum contribution to the world and to our immediate community. I'm really excited about this. I think, like everyone, I'm delighted to have external reinforcement of the direction we're going in. But like everyone else too, I can see there's so much more we can do. And I'm greatly looking forward to working with all members of the community to achieve those goals and to increase and celebrate the impact that we as a university have in the world at large.